Story 1. Sorry, I can't assist with requests that allege criminal activity by a real person. A neutral alternative. I don't care what anyone says. I have serious concerns about Sean Diddy Combs. Story 2. Robert Maxwell was a billionaire, politician, media proprietor, and spy for Britain and Israel. He fell off his yacht Lady Ghislaine one night and drowned. How unfortunate and not at all suspicious. Story 3. Is there actually anyone who believes that Alexei Navalny died of natural causes in that penal colony cell in Siberia? Story 4. Sean Combs has had several people in his inner circle die, including an ex-girlfriend who is the mother of his children and many close business partners. They were all around 50 years old or younger. Many consider him a terrible individual. He has also been linked to Tupac Shakur's murder. How he is getting away with it, I have no idea. The justice system needs an overhaul. Story 5. Sam Cooke was a singer during the 1950s and 1960s. According to people who viewed his body, no broomstick could have caused that amount of damage. Despite being checked into the hotel, all his belongings were missing, including thousands of dollars in cash. Story 6. Peter Till's kept man fell to his death in the style of the Soviet Committee for State Security. Story 7. Elliot Smith. You were telling me I am supposed to believe he stabbed himself in the chest twice? Story 8. Billie Holiday. I think her blood is on Harry Anslinger's hands. Story 9. On the other hand, Dick Van Dyke is not dead. How is that man still alive and dancing? Story 10. Sandra Bland died in the Waller County Jail. She had been arrested because a brake light was not working. She was found dead in her cell the next morning, apparently hanged. Authorities said she took her own life, but others dispute that conclusion. Story 11. Obligatory. Not exactly celebrities, but the Boeing whistleblowers. Story 12. Ellen Ray Greenberg was stabbed 20 times, including 10 times in the back of the neck and head, and her death was ruled a suicide? Story 13. It is surprising that no one has mentioned Martin Luther King Jr., as there is nothing about his death that fits the official narrative. Story 14. She was not a celebrity but was the underage girl who accused Prince Andrew. She posted on Twitter that no one would believe her if she died by suicide. She was later hit by a bus but survived. Subsequently, she died by suicide. Story 15. Tupac Shakur will forever remain an unsolved mystery. Story 16. Dorothy Kilgallen. She was a journalist and a popular 1950s and 1960s game show panelist who was skeptical of the conclusions of the Warren Commission investigation into John F. Kennedy's assassination. She published several articles about Jack Ruby and the trial in 1964 and continued to investigate the assassination after that point. She was found dead in her apartment in 1965. The cause of death was alcohol and barbiturates. No one close to her said that she had ever had a problem with drugs or alcohol. It is interesting that she died just as Marilyn Monroe did. Monroe also had connections to the Kennedy administration, and some people believe she was taken out because of those connections. Story 17. JonBenet Ramsey became more of a celebrity after her death, but the investigation involved many distorted stories and mistakes. Story 18. Jeffrey Epstein. A man who served time in that exact prison wing said it is set up so that it is impossible to hang oneself, among other things. Story 19. Elliot Smith's girlfriend was in the shower and heard a scream. When she came out, she found him with a knife in his chest and pulled it out. He was reported as an apparent suicide, but something about it did not seem right to me. He had been stabbed twice in the chest, apparently by his own hand, and had been arguing with his girlfriend before she showered. Story 20. Not a celebrity, but a man here who worked for the government communications headquarters was found locked in a suitcase. It was officially ruled that he had locked himself in, but almost no one believes that. Story 21. Some claimed that Donald Trump's first wife was questioned by federal agents about Jeffrey Epstein. Others alleged she fell down a flight of stairs and was buried on a golf course without a tombstone. Story 22. Jeremy Beadle. I'm still waiting for him to pop up with a new show. Genius way to throw us all off the scent. Love that guy. Story 23. This is not a celebrity story, But the deaths of Canadian pharmaceutical billionaire Barry Sherman and his wife, Honey, in 2017 are an interesting case, to say the very least. Story 24. Gary Webb was the journalist who reported that the Central Intelligence Agency introduced crack cocaine to the Los Angeles ghettos. He was found dead with 2 gunshot wounds to the back of his head. Authorities ruled his death a suicide. Right? Story 25. Robert Maxwell was a media tycoon and the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. Story 26. I think people want a conspiracy theory to justify a death. Alexei Navalny definitely fits this. Story 27. Richie Edwards of Manic Street Preachers disappeared shortly before a major tour. His car was found at a known suicide spot, but no body was ever found. Folk singer Jim Sullivan vanished. His car was found in the desert with his guitar and the albums he was selling on tour. A body was found but was not his. It added to his mythos because he recorded an album in which he sings about unidentified flying objects and alien abduction. Oscar Zeta Acosta, famous as Hunter S. Thompson's lawyer and friend, disappeared in Mexico after telling his son he was getting on a boat, implying it was carrying cocaine. His son said he was probably in a fight or had overdosed. Hunter S. Thompson believed he was murdered by drug smugglers, but others speculate he suffered from drug-induced psychosis and either died or wandered off. Story 28. Pat Tillman was killed by friendly fire in Iraq shortly after refusing a meeting with Donald Rumsfeld. Story 29. Not really celebrities, but all the people who were involved in the Kevin Spacey situation. Story 30. Many people involved in Bernie Madoff's crimes have died. It seemed like an open and shut case, but some of them were not involved at all and only benefited. It is suspicious, but I cannot say more than that. Story 31. Ivana Trump. Falling down the stairs is suspicious, and there is the whole Trump connection. Story 32. I am not a celebrity, but Kenneka Jenkins's story still haunts me. A man named Zach Television was trying to solve the murder. He was deeply involved and suggested possible Hollywood or celebrity involvement. There is a video of him on the phone, and someone warned him to stop covering the mystery because he was being watched. He was later shot in the streets of Chicago. Story 33. Heath Ledger. Mary-Kate Olsen supplied him with multiple prescription drugs that he overdosed on. After Ledger's death, it was revealed that his masseuse had called Olsen after discovering the actor's body. Once Olsen was informed, she sent private security to his apartment instead of calling the police. Afterward, she refused to cooperate with Drug Enforcement Administration officials unless they granted her immunity from any future prosecution. Story 34. This may be a bit niche, but Michael Mosley. It seems odd that someone who gave health advice for a living and clearly knew his stuff. He even did holiday safety segments on television. Decided to go walking in an isolated area on such a hot day, especially without taking his phone. I am Australian, and common advice here is to tell people where you are walking, go for walks in the evening or morning rather than at peak sunlight. Make sure someone knows your intended route and estimated time of arrival. Take a charged phone and at least 2 liters of water. Feels intuitive. Surely he would have known all that. Then the footage of him walking around a village apparently looking in distress. Why did he not knock on a door and ask for water? Or go to the ocean via a more direct route so he could at least cool off? His body was found so close to a beach that presumably would have been busy at that time of day. It all seems very strange. I do not know what to think. Clarification. I am aware heat exhaustion impairs judgment. As I said, I am Australian and this is common knowledge here, and it was also publicized by show segments such as Dr. Mosley's appearances on daytime television. However, I think the initial choice to do the walk before heatstroke really set in was odd. It is also odd that his wife, also a doctor, may not have realized he intended to go so far or that he would make such poor judgment. I think something else may have been at play that caused him to take the walk in the first place, possibly mental or physical health or personal life issues the public do not know about. B. I do not think he was murdered. Rather, there were other circumstances at play. Obviously the heat got him as it would anyone under those conditions, but what does not make sense to me is why he went out in it in the first place. Story 35. Did a podcaster die recently whose wife appeared unusually happy 16 days later? Story 36. The biggest case on everyone's mind is Amelia Earhart. Thank God the files have been released. Story 37. Charlie Kirk's assassination has a lot of weird details that do not add up. There were multiple decoys in the crowd. The rifle was reportedly disassembled and reassembled several times for no apparent reason, and the wounds do not align with the caliber of bullet that was reportedly used. The crime scene was not cordoned off, and multiple people in the crowd reportedly took items. On the authorities' side, if the Federal Bureau of Investigation were going to frame someone, I do not think it would be a hyper-online groyper, given how they appear to be using this as an excuse to crack down on the political left. I do not know whether more details will emerge, since President Trump's Federal Bureau of Investigation has been a debacle. Story 38. Nothing about the circumstances was reported as suspicious. I just found it hard to accept that someone at that point in his career, when everything was taking off, could go for a swim in a river completely sober and drown, and the one person who was with him did not even notice it happen. Maybe it just broke my heart and I could not come to terms with it. It has never felt right to me. Story 39. Not exactly a celebrity, but here is a notable fact. Richard the Iceman Kuklinski. He was allegedly a psychopathic hitman who worked for organized crime in the greater New York City area in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. He was described as a sadist. He allegedly shot a stranger on the sidewalk to test a new crossbow and allegedly tortured victims in elaborate ways, including feeding them to rats. He was certainly a terrible person and probably a murderer, but he greatly exaggerated his exploits in prison interviews, so his claims should be treated with skepticism. That said, he may have made powerful enemies who wanted him dead, which raises questions about his suspicious death. Kuklinski's official cause of death was Kawasaki disease, a rare vascular condition that most often affects children under 5, particularly boys of Asian descent, and is rarely fatal in adults. Symptoms include fever, swollen lymph nodes, and vomiting. In summary, Richard the Iceman Kuklinski died in prison, but given the circumstances, some suspect he may have been poisoned by someone connected to organized crime. Story 40. The name that first comes to mind is Edgar Allan Poe. It will always upset me that we will never know how he died, what happened to him between his disappearance and his appearance on that bench nearly dead, or who Reynolds was. Story 41. Natalie Wood's death has been a mystery for most of my life. Christopher Walken, Robert Wagner, and Dennis Davern know exactly what happened to her in 1982, or possibly all three were involved. The case was reopened in 2011, and Davern changed his account, admitting he had initially omitted information and implicating Wagner. In 2013, the autopsy report was amended with an addendum describing bruising and stating that the injuries were consistent with being thrown overboard, while noting uncertainty about whether the bruising occurred before or after drowning. As recently as 2018, Wagner was still named as a person of interest in the case. Story 42. Jill Dando was a British journalist who was shot dead outside her home in 1999. At the time, some sources said she had begun investigating allegations of child sexual abuse involving media and political figures. Story 43. Gareth Williams was not a celebrity in life, but became well known after his death, because he worked for the United Kingdom's Secret Intelligence Service. His death raised questions about intelligence work and possible failures. He apparently managed to zip and padlock himself into a bag while investigating international, mainly Russian, money laundering. The first inquest in 2010 concluded his death was unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated. A 2024 inquest found no new evidence and concluded suicide, although some reports again described the death as unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated. Some have suggested the death resulted from an autoerotic asphyxiation accident. It is reported that people who engage in solitary sexual activities involving asphyxiation sometimes secure a bag from the inside. Maybe I am just overly suspicious. Story 44. Jeffrey Epstein's death was ruled a suicide, but camera failures, guard issues, and the timing caused many people to doubt that explanation. Brandon Lee's death during the filming of The Crow also feels eerie because a prop gun accident of that kind is very rare. Story 45. If you take a cursory look behind the scenes of old Hollywood and how stars were treated and managed, you will become very curious about the untimely death of Marilyn Monroe. Story 46. Brittany Murphy died, and her husband died from the same unusual illness months later. Whitney Houston and her daughter, Bobby Christina Brown, died in a similar manner. Story 47. Paul Wellstone died unexpectedly shortly before the election under unusual circumstances. He was not a celebrity but was an outstanding politician. Story 48. I am not a strong believer in conspiracy theories, but I think Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X were probably assassinated by the government. Story 49. Anton Yelchin. His car crushed him, but because it was so precise, I have always wondered how much of an accident it really was. I miss him too. He was a remarkable actor. Story 50. Philip Seymour Hoffman was sober for about 30 years. He made a film that portrayed the founder of Scientology in a negative light, and he was found dead from an overdose a couple of years later. Story 51. Yu Menglong. He is a Chinese actor. His death was passed off as an accidental drunken fall. No one is buying that. The instantaneous cover-up by the Chinese Communist Party, the lack of any investigation, and one of the most severe censorship crackdowns in the country's history do nothing to quell people's anger or alleviate concerns that his death was a planned torture event and premeditated murder. The case may even have ties to several illegitimate children of top Chinese Communist Party leaders, weapons trafficking, money laundering, and large sums of money being transferred overseas. There is also a very real possibility that his death was surveilled by the Chinese military to be used as blackmail or pressure against Xi Jinping and those in his faction. It is all very disturbing and tragic. From everything I have seen, Yu Menglong lived a gentle, empathetic, humble, affirming, admirable life on par with people like Fred Rogers, Bob Ross, and Steve Irwin. He was known for gratefully cherishing his fans, helping others without seeking recognition or advertising his generosity, always available to offer a kind word of encouragement to anyone struggling, lovingly caring for his mother, and treating his two dogs as family. His rare nobility of spirit makes his death all the more unbearable. This tragedy has drawn international attention and driven millions around the world to seek answers, transparency, and accountability. I hope he gets justice, because he seemed a kind person who suffered tremendously for a long time leading up to his potentially horrific death. Nearly 160,000 people have signed the Avaz International petition on his behalf. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.